Hey everybody, it's Alex, and I'm back with another session planning out my next little game project, Endless Fantasy. So last time we spoke a bit about like the plan for like what it actually is the design of the game itself. Like what game am I trying to make? What are all the systems that I have to go about implementing, and kind of like what order would I want to do that to get a good tiny working version of the game ready to ship out to people. And so today we're discussing, I guess, a more light, more fun topic of like maybe some ideas for like what actually is what is the hook, what is like the compelling fiction behind the game, because like I think with this there's like so much room for like just like screwing around with the fiction and coming up with like and using that as a vehicle to come up with like interesting enemy and encounter ideas, right? Because it's it like the source of inspiration here is every JRPG every JRPG and RPG ever, like that. And any mechanic we've seen, like fair game, right? Fair game to pop up on this. So I guess like we'd start with what is the core fantasy here? Like what are you actually doing? And so you're fighting like endless waves of enemies, right? Going with your party of adventurers. He's like progressing in levels. Maybe there is some kind of like end goal. There is like a final boss, and then there's like a super boss or whatever. There's some kind of like as opposed to like you're just fighting slimes forever, because that would be lame. But let's say it's like you're climbing your way through some sort of like massive tower of bad guys or something. It could be as simple as you're just like getting loot in the tower or whatever. You're like that kind of adventurer where you're just going in like looking for treasure, and then it's just you kind of are happening to go fight across all these enemies because it's your job. Or it's like maybe there's some sort of more epic thing behind it of like this is the tower of the evil Mad Wizard. Mad Wizard lives at the very tippy top, and you've got to fight through floors and floors of bad guys in order to stand a chance at defeating him. And that could very easily just be it right there. But I think like a tower maybe is like reasonable if like it's because like you're like the game takes place entirely in the battle menu of like a Final Fantasy game. That's the idea. So there is no exploration, or if there is like quote unquote exploration, it's just going to be like maybe after you beat like a boss or something, you get the option of like press left and you'll go up the like through like the observatory or something of like that'll be the next sort of level is themed around that. You have like some like sort of stellar enemies or whatever, a guy with a big telescope or something. Or you could choose to go right, and you could go take a path through the library, and you're fighting like old like magic enchanted evil books or something, and that becomes like your next opponent is books, because everyone knows how how mysterious and vile those things are. And that would be like the extent of the exploration possible that I would see in the game. But because of that, like I think the game sort of like the fiction kind of would lend itself most closely to being in like you're in a building, and like whether it's like a giant castle or it's like a tower or something, but it is like it's like a mostly linear, right? It's mostly like a linear path, maybe with some branching, and so you're not really, you know, like if like the story takes place in like some sort of sprawling overworld, it like kind of doesn't really make sense. It's like, oh, you know, we're always just going to the right. It's like an NES game. You know, every time you beat a level, you're just going from the forest to the desert to the tundra or whatever, and like, yeah, like I guess it really doesn't really matter one way or the other, but I think it just sounds cool if it's like a tower, of like, and that can give you like a real sense of like the progression, of like you've gone through like 40 floors of bad guys, of like you've cleared out 40, you know, floors, maybe like a handful of encounters or something, and like every 5-10 floors you're getting mid bosses and big bosses, until you end up at the very top of the tower. Floor 50 is the fight with the Mad Mage, right? And that, you know, I think that is like, you know, that sounds pretty plausible to me as like a as like a framing device for this game. The thing is like the floor thing. The floor thing I think is really like a relic of it. You know, it really makes sense in like D&D. And like that old school dungeon crawling version of D&D, where you know, it is like a direct map to like how difficult the encounters in this part of the dungeon are going to be, is what floor you're on, and the exploration actually does matter. With this, like, it's you know, like does it make sense for like all the encounters to sort of be separate like by floor, or like you know, would we want to design, you know, let's say like you know, 15 seconds in to the game, we spawn like our first batch of enemies is like, you know, like a little party of skeletons or something, right? And you know, if you know, everything goes right, you defeat them, you know, case closed, you go to the next encounter. But maybe if you take too long, the encounter from the next floor, you know, like wanders down in. You know, it's a little bit like of a fancy way of putting it, but like you respawn in the next set of encounters before you're done with the last one, right? And, you know, that's where like maybe the floor thing kind of breaks down a little. But like if we're in a, you know, pseudo real-time system here, like I think it would only make sense to introduce real-time elements to like the pacing of, like, you know, keeping you on your toes, of like, you know, you're fighting this boss or whatever, but if like you take too long, like we're gonna spawn some more guys, or like, yeah, and maybe that is like a separate encounter of like, you know, the floor 2 encounter. It starts off with like 3 goblins. If you take too long, we'll spawn 2 more goblins, and then like, you know, another one every 45 seconds or something. You know, these are all like totally random numbers here. Like that could be it. That could be the you know, how it works, or it could be, you know, totally, or it could be, you know, just drawing from the pool of the next floor of the next encounter directly, like, right? And so I guess it doesn't really matter in terms of like how the theming really works. Like a, you know, like I think it does make a lot less sense if it's you start having like enemy from like the next floor like come down, and then it's like I'm trying to think of like visually you're trying to always display of like what floor the player's on, so they know how far they've come. And if you start blending different encounters together, maybe that becomes less clear, less apparent. So yeah, I mean, I'm talking myself into it. Yeah, I think of like of isolating encounters, but adding like potential reinforcements to them. Of like that might make the most sense. Or of like we're treating floors like as very small things. Maybe like a floor, like there aren't 50, 100 floors. Maybe there's like 6 floors, and each floor is like this timed out encounter where it matters more that like at a minute and a half we're gonna go spawn the big bad orc war chief is gonna show up. And so like you're fighting your way through all like the early enemies we spawned in for the floor. You're trying to clear the way as much as you can before the boss shows up, because then you would know like, oh crap, like I'm gonna get overwhelmed because that guy's gonna show up with his orc honor guard or something. And like if I let the encounter pile up that much, then I am so screwed. And like just thinking about that, like that sounds like a really awesome thing. That's like that is emergent gameplay, right? Of like that specific scenario that makes fits in with that real time or that active time battle mechanic, and could create like very unique, interesting scenarios, interesting gameplay scenarios. So I think that might be the solution, is to sort of confine things that way. And if it's like a if it is like a smaller amount of like floors, quote unquote, like tower becomes less interesting, and maybe it does become like a castle, and we can play up like the branching paths, the branching paths a lot more. Of like I can pick the library or the observatory, or do whatever, but I'm still trying to work my way to like the throne room where the big bad evil guy is hanging out, right? So that is all of that. Okay. Any questions? Any questions, anybody? I think like that seems like a really pretty solid, like just initial premise to go off of to me. I think yeah, like just like thinking about it, I'm getting the urge to go play some of like those old Castlevanias again, and just go through them, because they a lot of them, like even like the classic Vanias, have some of this like branching path stuff in them, where they're theming their areas and encounters around like different parts of the castle. So let's say like here's the approach is like you start off like the very first level is you're in like the little woods outside of the castle. You're kind of like working your way in there. Maybe you're fighting against like wolves and like goblins and crap like that. And then the boss of this area is going to be like the gatekeeper, like the guy, some sort of like big armored knight that's like hanging out on like the drawbridge or something. That's like the one way in is past this guy, and you have to beat him before you're able to prove yourself and move into the rest of the castle, right? And then once you get in there, you have like the branching paths. Like you got like a moat. You can like go into like the catacombs, maybe like the courtyard, your observatories, your libraries, your this and that, maybe the castle graveyard is in there somewhere. Some sort of like just like the grand hall, that could be an area. Maybe like, and as you work your way through, you're getting more extreme area, like you're getting like the parapets, you're like on the rooftops or something, fighting like gargoyles, and maybe there's a dragon. And if you do perform very well in or poorly, maybe like different options become available to you as progression paths through the castle. Of like, if you manage to like make it the whole way without taking any damage, you can go through the secret door, like the secret passage, and fight like some sort of super boss for like tons of extra loot, and that becomes like an additional wrinkle in how you would go about that game. And like, another layer to all of this is like that I don't think I would do in just like the initial version of the game, but in like a more real product version of the game, like you would have your meta progression of, as you're going through and like, every time you beat the mad mage or whatever it is, like you maybe will unlock like a new class or something, and you can choose like, from your like initial party, like different like a party makeup of like different characters to pick from. Maybe you're unlocking new like spells or weapons that can show up in the level up table, right, in the loot table, and that would be the next layer of like turning that into a real game is would be to add that like extra progression loop to keep you playing, and then there you go. That's like it's a roguelike. it's the Final Fantasy roguelike, and it's awesome. So that would be the idea. That would kind of be like, what we would be like ultimately aiming for if it seems like that this is a good enough of an idea to stand on its own. So yeah, there you go. I guess like, we can give it a little bit more thought into, because I've got like another 15 minutes to kill here in my drive. So we can give it some more thought of like, what are the other elements here. I think like the most interesting thing probably is going to be that final objective of like, what is the you're going to end up fighting some sort of like really crazy final boss type character, right? Of like, that is like the the thing. So like, what makes sense? Like, what would be so cool that would like guide you? And like right now we're just like thinking of like the very generic like Final Fantasy or even like sort of like Castlevania-y themed. It doesn't have to be that. Like that could be another option too of a way to give this game a hook. Is like, maybe like the fiction is just like entirely different. It doesn't take it from like the fantasy stuff at all. Maybe it's more of like a Earthbound-y type, like, more quirkier game, where like you have more like, wacky sorts of types of enemies, like in like an Undertale, as opposed to just like your slimes and skeletons and your evil knights and crap like that. Yeah, that's obviously an option. You know, but I think it I think I would want it to be primarily like fantasy, so that it is all of those classic JRPG abilities of like the sword attack and like the fire and the thunder and the ice spell of like that kind of stuff. I think makes it's like that's just like so core to the genre that I think it's going to be hard to it would be a lot harder to not have that. So there you go. I think like if we are just thinking of like fantasy, if we're just like keeping it like strictly there, you know, like your end boss could be like just like dragons are cool. Dragons are end boss material, certainly. Maybe it's like but I think, you know, if it's like a castle, like it's like this, you know, you need to have like some sort of humanoid guy that is like the ruler of this thing, and we do want to, like, you know, eventually, you know, through this branching path system here, you're going to converge at the very end, at like the far end of the castle, like, or like the top tower is like where the king, you know, the evil ruler is going to have like the throne room, right? And like that's where the final battle is going to take place. Like that's what I would think. And you would want, you know, like the advantage of this not being an action game is that like that character can be as like have like as crazy and ridiculous a design as you want. So that's something to keep in mind too. Is like, you know, most of the game is just going to be static sprites on screen, just like standing there. So there is like a lot lower cost to you know, developing out like a scary tentacle monster or something, because the animation for that doesn't have to have any sort of complicated you know, tentacle skeleton rigging system backing it. Like, it's just going to be like flashed through like 3 frames of sprite that's just going to be like, doing an attack. Maybe we'll scale the model or like add a little particle effect over it, and that's it. It's like that is so free. that is so free to add whatever the heck it is we want, and have that be the thing. So that could be cool. I guess, like, you know, thinking about it, like, you know, we're already saying, because it's a castle, you know, castle has a king. Castle's got like a king or a ruler or something. So maybe the fiction is, you have this like evil sorcerer king, right? You know, he's like some kind of like devil worshiper or something. Maybe he's got like his like legion of like evil knights that are hanging out around the castle that you have to go through one by one and like go beat these guys up, steal their like magic keys or their treasure or whatever, and maybe like, you know, that's a way, you know, very easily it could become less linear too, is like, is maybe like you're putting together like some sort of special key out of fragments you're getting from each of like the area bosses, and then you can kind of tackle that in whatever order. That could be like an option, right? But, you know, maybe that, you know, that there's some way, you know, maybe that's like an interesting thing to like theme all of the knights or all of the area bosses are like sort of tied together in some way, of like, you know, maybe you have like Sir Sir Godric, the scholar, and he's hanging out in the library. He's like and he's like a more sorcery themed guy, and like knight armor. Maybe he's like summoning shit. He's got casting like awesome spells or whatever, and maybe he like turns into like a super mega monster somehow. That could be like tied into it again, like because I think I think these are real considerations that matter more. Like this stuff does not really matter for the Game Jam version of this game, but it is like exciting, interesting to like think of it. And I think like if I had like a good pixel art artist on retainer, the fact that like it is there are so few limitations aside from like maybe even like just having to fit on screen. There's like so few limitations in the design of like what kinds of monsters and enemies you could come up with for this type of game, that like you could end up with like really cool, crazy stuff. And like just think of in those Super Nintendo or even like any of those early Final Fantasies, of like the amount of crazy designs and like dragons and Metal Gears and liches and sea monsters and all sorts of stuff, like giant enemies, crazy stuff going on that they were able to create as enemy sprites in that game, and you could see it's like like the cost of just like adding that is like relatively low, again because like there's so you like have to do very little work because it's not moving around at all. It's like you don't have to model it, you don't have to animate it, like hardly. So I think that would be very, very interesting if we get to the point where that really becomes an option, and then you could play so much with like maybe even there are some more like crazy out there areas of maybe like you beat the king, the evil, the Dark Lord, and then you unlock like a secret area. If you beat him like enough times, you unlock like the space zone of like he's got his like secret like rocket ship in the back, and then you fly off to like some kind of distant planet, right? And now you're fighting like Metroids and Xenomorphs and stuff, like that could be like so easily extensible, and then like in terms of like the ideas you could run with for there, it would really just be a matter of like coming up with like novel like monster designs from a gameplay standpoint to like just populate that of like but I think like just being so open lets you just have that incredible volume, and so I think that actually sounds really cool, and it sounds like a good avenue to test out a lot of designs and like get and work stuff. So very exciting, very, very exciting. So I'm trying to think of like if there's anything else I want to cover for just right now. In terms of like what to do, I think like the immediate future, like the things that I should be implementing is like some of these like the very basic like dumb enemy types of like just like melee mooks, goblins and skeletons and crap like that. If you have like that as like a class of enemies, like action economy filler, you could have like slimes you could think are more interesting, like if they'll subdivide if you hit them, and then like the targeting becomes a problem because targeting is I think one of the primary things you want to, or you could get something like really interesting out of this system in terms of like choices of maybe the way a slime works is if you bring them down to like half health and don't kill them, like that's when they would subdivide into two smaller slimes. But if you're able to like knock them out, then they won't split up, and then you can complete encounters like more or less efficiently that way, right? That could be like a very, very easily like a interesting thing that happens. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for now. I'm kind of almost at the end of my drive here, and I don't, there's still a lot of work to do before we get into it, but I'm excited. I think there's like a lot of cool potential to play around in this space and like, just do stuff. So thank you very much for listening. If you have any fun ideas for monsters or encounters or anything really about the game, please drop a comment in the comment section below. Like, comment, and subscribe, and join me back next time where we'll continue working the game, talking about fun stuff, doing whatever it is we do on the Alex podcast. So thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful day.